Ian Botham famously said that West Indies is a great place to go, provided you don't have to play cricket. The Indian captain lost it. Scuffle between an Indian captain and a random spectator who could be carrying a knife.
Tell me about how in the world can that actually happen on a tour?
When the bad light came into play and they offered us the light, and I said, okay, we'll take the light, but let's see whether we are winning it at this stage if the match is abandoned. And nobody knew inside what the playing conditions were.
I mean, do you have things sometimes you want to say, but you think, you know what, it's just not worth the controversy?
I don't care, honestly, about the trolls.
The most talented player you have ever played with or watched over the years?
Nobody comes close when it comes to sheer talent. Indian batting will be, I think, will decide the fate of the series because both Virat, Rohit are both not in their prime, to be fair.
Hi everyone, welcome to Sportify Conversations. My guest today is known all over the cricketing world. He's known for his perfect technique with the bat, his unfiltered observations in the commentary box, and also as being the world's foremost encyclopedia of Kishore Kumar songs. Sanjay Manjrekar, thanks so much for joining me today on Sportify.
I know this interview is going to be good because I love the introduction. Thanks for bringing Kishore Kumar in. That's a very nice way to win me over. And the other thing that you said, unfiltered, was also nice to hear. And there was something else that you mentioned in the introduction, which I've forgotten.
Stupendous technique with the bat. I think that's what.
No, that is. Yeah, it's all about the runs, isn't it?
Not technique. It's funny. It's funny you say the Kishore Kumar part because obviously I remember you as a cricketer and obviously now as a commentator. But I remember the episode of Antakshari where I think you dominated on television more than you've ever dominated before. Was it Rahul Dravid who was your partner? I think there in that episode.
Yeah, those were the days, and it was a very popular show. And Rahul remembers that very fondly. He said, "Thank to Sanjay, I got a toaster and an oven and a fridge because those were the prizes." And I actually downplayed a little bit. I played below my level because I didn't want to seem like there was nobody in my league. Although it came across later as that, but I actually on a few songs I didn't venture an answer or whatever.
You didn't want to dominate your teammates.
Yeah, too much and that shows, how narrow the focus of cricketers can be. I hope Rahul is listening to this.
So Sanjay, let's get started. I mean, obviously, I want to talk to you about the current cricket scenario, but I really want to start with the start of your Test career because it was very interesting. You had your first Test, obviously, in Delhi, but then 14 of your next 15 Tests were overseas. 14 of your first 15 Tests were overseas. So you really, and this was a time when not a lot of Indian batsmen were scoring runs abroad. But you go to the West Indies, where you get your first century, and actually you're the top Indian run getter on that tour. Then you go to Pakistan and have a tour for the ages, where you average almost 95, you have a double century, a century, 350s, and again, you're the top scorer, not just for India, but for the entire series. So what are you thinking at this point? Are you thinking, what is this Test cricket? I mean, this is going to be a breeze. What's going through your mind? Because you're 23 years old at that time.
Yeah, I think once I got that first 100 in the West Indies, I felt at home at Test cricket. I was flying high because that was the ultimate challenge. And it was the ultimate dream as well to get runs against the West Indians in West Indies and not even at Guyana, which is one of the flatter pitches there. At Barbados, which is known to be pace friendly. So once that happened, I was a 23-year-old, 24-year-old, and I was flying high. I felt wow. And when I came back home and I started playing the Indian bowlers in the nets, it seemed like they were bowling at 112 kilometers per hour. So all that, just put me in a space where I thought I was a world beater. So what happened in Pakistan was a lot easier. Flat pitches, although they tried to make it, seam friendly, but those were easy pitches to bat on. They had a good fast bowling attack, but their slip catches wouldn't catch a single. You had to take a single catch. So all that helped. So Pakistan was slightly sort of autopilot mode. What happened in the West Indies was the big springboard for me.
because of the West Indies team at that side and the
Yeah.
conditions. So I do have a question on the West Indies side later on, which I'll get to. But I want to now move on to your book, by the way. And for anyone who hasn't
Mm.
read it, if you like cricket or like sports in general, you must pick this up. Imperfect by Sanjay Manjrekar. Very interesting title, by the way. But I also and I love the book because I think unlike a lot of sports autobiographies that I read, this one was very honest and open. And
And
I
also,
love
it's a
that.
storybook. It's a story of a person more than a cricket book. I don't think you'll learn about a single match there or scores. Or everything is just a story of a guy trying his best.
Yeah, I think you really described that well. So I want to read a excerpt from the book, and then I have a question for you from that. You say at the start of my India career, it was easy to see that there were two teams within the team, a North Zone team and a West Zone team. Players from the North Zone team of India wouldn't speak freely in the presence of a member from the West Zone team of India. You also go on to say that the early 90s was a bad time to be in the India team. There was just too much mistrust, envy, and hatred among senior players. Was the atmosphere really that toxic? And I mean, who were the people that made it toxic? And, do you feel we would have won more matches at that period had the environment been different?
I think so, but it's typical of a country that is finding its feet and trying to become a major force in world cricket. And that happens, for example, Bangladesh as well now, the team that are trying to make it. So there comes a phase when most of the seniors realize that the team is just not good enough, can't beat certain teams. And when you went to the West Indies, Australia, England, you went with that feeling that you can't beat these people. If it happens, well, great. So everyone was sort of looking out for themselves. So you had some players being very happy about getting 100 or two, no matter you've lost the series 4-0. And it is typical of a team in that particular phase. I remember if you look at Mohammad Azharuddin's interview when he got 100 at Adelaide in the second innings, where India lost the match. And Azhar, when you hear him talk, you could see that he was very happy, relieved that he had finally got 100 in that series. He was going through a bit of a rut. So that is how Indian cricket was. And what you see now is only because India went through that. And that happens with, I think, most teams.
And when did that change? When did you see that change? When you were a player, or after you retired, or when did you see that happen?
It actually started to change close to my retirement because, earlier the culture of seniors from West Zone and North Zone, and there's no one person to be blamed. It was just that kind of a culture, the
Hmm.
mistrust, and, that was there in the whole team. But the whole dynamics of the team changed. You had a lot of these good guys from Karnataka who came in, and there was a lot of those, five or six in the team. Ajay Jadeja, interesting character in Indian cricket. He was a guy who just wanted everyone to be together. So we hung around together, and all that actually helped get rid of that little that climate that we had.
Going back to the West Indies, I'm going to read another excerpt from the book. When you're talking about the West Indies team of that time, I could even sense some compassion towards the opposition because they realized how difficult it was for us to stand up to their bowling. I never saw that with any other opposition. You would have some of their senior players going out of their way to advise us and guide us. I suspect it was more out of wanting a good contest. And that last line actually is my favorite line from that. You know, it's this I've never heard of any sports team or any athlete, right? When you talk about the way that you feel bad for your opponents and you actually start giving them advice so that you have a better match. Tell us about the aura about the West Indies team. Was there a genuine fear, not just for losing, but to get bodily harmed by their bowlers when you actually went into that tour? And you also mentioned a line about there were certain players who would disappear when it came to playing the West Indies. So tell us about playing that side.
See, Ian Botham famously said that West Indies is a great place to go, provided you don't have to play cricket in it. Good place to tour. So the bodily harm that you mentioned, I think that was the biggest battle that you had to fight. These were pre-helmet days, and just when helmets had come in, but all of us had gone through a junior level of cricket, which I've mentioned in the book as well, where all of us would have had a facial injury or something that would remind us that this ball can hurt and do some damage. So conquering that fear was one of the biggest challenges, and that's why Sunil Gavaskar is rated very highly in my view, purely because he was the one guy who was happy to open the innings and take fire head on without any protection. Some were good at studying the itinerary of Indian cricket, and their injuries were well timed. So that was the case as well. But it was not just the pace. It's also they used the intimidation, the physical fear that they put in your head to get wickets. And I guess somewhere, they had some kind of affection for Indian cricket. I believe India was called East Indies, when it was discovered the first time. So there was that, bond which got them to talk to us. Desmond Haynes, Viv Richards, Jeffrey Dujon, all these people went out of their way to talk to a 24-year-old trying to make a mark, trying to give tips that mattered. So somewhere, they had that kindness as well in them, which was brilliant.
That was the level of a team that maybe we haven't seen a team like that ever in the sport. Would you say that more than the Aussies of the early 2000s?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, four fast bowlers. I mean, they didn't have a spinner, they didn't have a Shane Warne, but just outstanding, the four fast bowlers and the batting. I mean, Viv Richards, even Virat Kohli, when he met Viv Richards in the West Indies, was completely sort of bowled over to have
Overall,
met the
yeah.
man, because yeah, everyone knows what he did during his time was special.
Your second overseas tour was Pakistan. You start your chapter in your book about Pakistan with an incident of the match in Karachi, where a spectator actually walked onto the ground and Shrikant and him got into a fight. Tell us about what happened that day.
Well, it was one of those typical test match days in Pakistan. We didn't get great crowds for the game. I don't know what the reason was. So I'm in my own world, and actually, that guy passed me first. I was at mid-on, I think, and wearing a grey sort of typical Pakistani suit that they wear, muttering something, and I just heard Kashmir or something. And then he went and then started shouting something. And Shrikant, I mean, can you imagine in today's times, a captain going up to him and trying to, get him out. And because of what he said, the Indian captain lost it. Scuffle between an Indian captain and a random spectator who could be carrying a knife or whatever. And there was actually a scuffle where Shrikant lost his shirts buttons on his shirt. It was ripped open. He actually, after that incident, went in, changed his shirt, and he came back. And amidst all this, Kiran More, the fighter that he is, was trying to find a gap between all the legs and arms and doing his own thing by kicking that spectator with his pad. It is unbelievable. And it didn't happen in the 18th century or something. And so it's amazing how times have changed for the better, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think you'd ever see something like that. That's the
Hmm.
day. That's a funny story, but not as funny as the next one I'm going to ask you about. Because in the same series, you said that you we played a match against Pakistan where one team thought it was an exhibition match and one team thought it was a real ODI. It sounded like we thought it was a real ODI and we thought it was an exhibition and Pakistan thought it was a real ODI because we had Shrikant bowling imitating Abdul Qadir's action. So tell me about how in the world can that actually happen on a tour?
Yes, some of the things that happened in those times. There's also one game, which was a World Cup game, where a batter batted thinking that he was batting in the 48th over as opposed to 47th. Can you imagine, in the finishing stages? And that's how he planned his innings, because there were all these things that used to happen. You had 8 ball overs, and Australia was one of the only countries that actually, messed it up a little bit with 8 balls over. And they also had the over in progress put on the scoreboard. So if there was the 46th over being bowled, it wasn't 45, and the 46th over being bowled, they would put 46,
Oh, okay,
which,
okay.
yeah, so it got one of our players confused, and that's how he later confessed. just bizarre things that matches Sharjah as well, playing conditions where the umpires were absolutely not at fault when the bad light came into play and they offered us the light. And I said, okay, we'll take the light, but let's see whether we are winning it at this stage if the match is abandoned. And nobody knew inside what the playing conditions were. So poor fellow, our coach, I think it was Ashok Mankar or somebody said, no, keep playing. We'll see how it goes.
But you all were ahead at the time?
Because see, we had different rules at the time.
Different
At
rules,
that
right, right,
stage, there
right.
was a comparison, and there was another, introduction of these were all playing conditions with bad light. So there were two or three that were being used at the time, and I just wanted to find out, be sure which is the one that we are using, or just let us know at this stage if I take the umpire's offer, is India winning? And they said we don't know, just keep playing. And then also, while we are on the subject, some of the thing that there was also an incident with me in a test match where I called the reserve player outside, W.V. Raman, I think it was, and I complained to him about my non-striking batter, my partner, saying that that guy is refusing to bat on this side because I'm facing the tougher bowler. I think if we rotate the strike, not only will we get more runs, I think it will help each other's calls as well. I can't be taking the fire all the time. And he went in, and next over he came out again. He had lodged my complaint and said that no, you know how he is. You'll have to keep batting and try and manage. So amazing things.
Someone that you mentioned in your book, actually more than anyone else, in fact, there's about 10 pages straight about him, was Imran Khan. And Imran Khan, for a lot of the current generation, it's a bit of an enigma. You hear stories about, fantastic all rounder, playboy, obviously he's a politician now, but what was it about Imran? I mean, you talk so much about him. What was it about Imran that made him so great?
This Imran that I've talked about is the cricketer Imran Khan. The
Of course,
politician
of
Imran
course.
Khan, I've got no idea what he's all about. Just 10 out of 10 man for me. Because, all of us in India would watch tapes and pictures of Imran Khan and you'd say, wow, he was like a Greek god the way he looked, had a great bowling style, captain. When we went to Pakistan, that's when I realized what a great cricketer he was. I mean, it was a boring series, drawn series, but this guy bowled his heart out on flat pitches. His speed by that time had gone down to maybe 130. So he was very easy to manage, but the standards that he set for himself, he would bowl that big in swinger from outside off, and he wanted it to finish on off stump. And if anytime it finished on middle and leg, and if I clipped him on the leg side for a run, he used to swear and get so angry with himself. Those were the standards that he set. He would bowl 35 overs. And then finally the innings would come to an end. He would go inside and at tea time he would pad up. He would put his pads on and come out and take a knock. He was batting at number 7 or something. So that kind of commitment. And finally, when I met him after that trip in England, when I'd gone to New Zealand and I had a quiet series, he came and he was upset that I didn't get runs in New Zealand. And he said, why were you playing Richard Hadley of the back foot? Because when you came to Pakistan, you played Wasim of the front foot, and you should have done that. And maybe, when he bowled a short ball, you should have pulled him once, and, that kind of a thing. And I was amazed
Wow.
how passionate he was about talent from all over the world. I haven't seen anyone, be all these qualities in one man. We were playing an exhibition match in England and Indian Pakistani crowd coming in, and we were winning that game. Crystal Palace, I think, was the venue. And when the Pakistani supporters realized that their team not going to win, they sort of disrupted the match. There wasn't much security and everything. And Imran came out and he actually held the mic and he said that was very unsporting behavior from the Pakistani fans. And as far as this match is concerned, because it was a series of matches, India has won this match. We're going to count this as an official win for India.
That's very rare to see that, actually. So
Yeah,
that's.
yeah, yeah.
Let's move on a little bit to the current game, Sanjay. What do we do with one day cricket? Does it have a place today in today's hectic schedule of leagues, Test cricket, T20? Where does this fit in? And would you change any part of the format, or what would you do with the game?
The problem with one day cricket is actually the World Cups, because every time we've
Mhm.
had that World Cup, every 4 years, it's turned out to be a hit event. And the kind of matches that we've had, the viewership would have hit the roof, last two finals and all that. So it's impossible for the administration to think that, because generally, when you look at all the other games, the bilaterals, there's no interest there. It's a boring format as well. I was put off by 50 overs cricket 15 years back. The only way 50 overs will maybe have some connect or become a little more popular is if it's made into 40 overs, and the World Cup year we could have maybe for the teams to get used to a 50 over World Cup. But 50 overs cricket is, like, for me, the most boring game as a
Yeah.
commentator to follow and watch.
So today's day and age, and obviously you've been a commentator for years now, but being a commentator is not easy, right? One statement and you're suddenly trending. One criticism and it's a war in the media between you and a player, whether it's true or not. And by you, I don't mean you specifically. I mean just in general. Although you have had certain back and forths with certain cricketers over a period of time. How do you navigate this? I mean, do you have things sometimes you want to say, but you think, you know what, it's just not worth the controversy and just not worth going? Because a lot of times, to me as a fan, it just seems like this is stupid, right? The media and the troll armies are just going after either the player or they're going after the commentator for no reason. So how do you navigate this and go through this?
Uh, one correction I'd like to make: I don't think there's been a back and forth between a player, a cricketer, and me. There was something said by the player about something that I had done as part of my job. With Sachin Tendulkar, that whole thing where he got upset was an article that I wrote. With Jadeja, it was a press conference kind of thing where I was being nice to all the Indian press guys because they were just waiting for some quote. And I said, okay, you're not getting anybody. Okay, I'll speak for 2 minutes. And then they asked me about Jadeja, and bits and pieces was a common term at the time, to use for
Yeah.
somebody who's not a specialist batter or a specialist bowler. And he thought it was derogatory, and he lashed out. But if you see, I've never sort of come back at the cricketer, because I've never forgotten one thing, that when I'm there at a cricket match, and since I became a commentator, I've just had this great respect for players. And even when I'm sort of waiting to do interviews, if the player comes in and he's ready, I'm pushing the director and the producer, come on, guys, come here, because I just respect them too much, because because of them that we have a job, and all this is happening. So I'm very, very concerned about that. So there's never been a back and forth. But now at this stage, I don't care. I don't care because I don't look at what's being said about me. The only thing I care about is my relationship with my employers,
Mm.
because you need a platform. I enjoy my job. I don't care honestly about the trolls. These are basically actually people on Twitter who troll in the fashion they do. Our people used to be standing under a tree in the 70s and 80s and lash out at players and everything. So basically those people are now on Twitter, that kind. And that's the noise that you hear. And the mainstream media picks it up. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
It's like actually in those days, people like Ken Prabhu and all these, great journalists going down under a tree and talking to all these fans and carrying their quotes. That is what Twitter is. So I don't care about it, honestly. There was a time when I used to, see what's being said and all that. But it's a hopeless scenario there. But you have a voice. And at this stage, the only thing I'm concerned about, honestly, are my friends, my employers, and of course, my family. Anything that would,
Yeah.
make that slightly sour, that relationship, is something that I'll wonder about. And I've realized being diplomatic or saying nothing for me is far more tough to do. Uh,
Yeah.
this is better to speak your mind unfiltered.
Yeah, that's actually why I chose those words, because I mean you and maybe a few others never hold back, which is,
Mm.
as someone who enjoys cricket, it's just refreshing, I would say, to
Also,
hear you
quickly,
guys.
sorry to interject, and this unfiltered thing is, again, by today's standards, we are all being quite respectful. the things that have
Of
been
course.
said earlier in commentary by legendary commentators. And if it's all about how the society is, right? Everybody is a bit more touchy now. Things that have been said in the past, it's just unbelievable. Like Bob Willis watching somebody batting and saying, this is absolutely embarrassing to watch. And, that kind of stuff. Nobody says that
Yeah.
anymore.
All right. I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is your all-time India Test playing 11?
I'll just tell you the guys who ought to be there.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I don't want to look at the balance and things like that, because I'll
Sure.
need some time. And players that I've seen and known, I didn't know Vijay Manjrekar or Vijay Hazare, how good they were. So Sunil Gavaskar has to get in purely because of how different he was from the rest. And when India needed that lone warrior to have some self-belief as a team, Sunil Gavaskar was the man. Tendulkar, for being this incredible batting mechanism. If I wanted somebody to play for my life, that this guy, if he gets 100, we won't kill you. Otherwise, you'll be killed. So if I have a choice between, say, Lara and Tendulkar, I would go for a Tendulkar.
Tendulkar.
All time, yeah, one. You'll have to help me with this. Now, fast bowlers, definitely Bumrah comes in. He hasn't played 100 test matches, but the best I've seen, Kapil Dev has to come in. Maybe Zair Khan as the third seamer. Perhaps spinners, I have to go back. Go back to the times of Prasanna and Chandrasekhar. I'll tell you how great Chandrasekhar was. We were just talking about Viv Richards and how great he was. And, I did a commentary series in the West Indies where we were commentating together, which meant you got more time with Viv in another room, just chatting. And I said, Viv, for a guy from the West Indies and you played a bit in England, you came to India and you got 170 in the second test against the Indian spinners. How do you do that? And he said, that's because Chandra wasn't playing. Chandra. So he said, Chandra didn't get picked for that test match because of some reason. And that was the only reason I could get that 100. So
That's a
that
big
is enough for
compliment.
me
Yeah.
so that is enough for me. So there he comes in the lower sort of middle order. Oh God, I'm not going to say between Pant and Dhoni, because when you look at keeper batters, those are the guys who come in contention. Pant is just
Yeah.
a freak show. He is unbelievable. So I'll wait for a bit more time, or maybe save the backlash for the future as to who I would want. But VVS Lakshman would get in at number 6 for his, wonderful ability. Rahul Dravid will come in. Virendra Sehwag is a guy I'd love to have. So yeah, basically these are the people. Anybody obvious one that I'm missing out?
Yeah. Going. Actually, there's I guess a number 5 spot kind of missing. You have with Gavaskar, Sehwag, Rahul Dravid, Tendulkar, then a gap, and then maybe a VVS. Anyone in the 5th spot you think?
Virat.
Virat. Okay.
Virat comes in. So yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, what number they could decide.
Okay, that
Tendulkar
order
and Virat could have a conversation and decide, because both of them like to bat at number 4. So yeah, that's a pretty good team actually.
Number 1, who is your commentating idol and who do you enjoy commentating with the most?
Lots of them, but if I have to pick one, Ian Chappell. He was like my mentor as well. He was a bit like Imran, 10 out of 10 when it came to being a person and a commentator.
And you enjoyed commentating with him the most, or even that, both mentor and was your idol?
Enjoying with a lot of people. Michael Holding, every time he sat next to you, you could just realize the intelligence of the man reading the game. Nasser and Mathur, the amount of work they put in. Ian Smith for just being this beautiful, voice and person. And that comes across in commentary as well. So lots of them. But if I have to just pick one for convenience, Ian Chappell, because he helped me a lot in my earlier years.
Okay. The most talented player you have ever played with or watched over the years?
Has to be Tendulkar. On pure talent. At 16, a guy who just took a couple of months to get used to the highest level. It's just incredible. And very soon started dominating inside 1 or 2 years, and a genuine 16-year-old. Nobody comes close when it comes to sheer talent.
India's best captain.
Mahendra Singh Dhoni.
Any particular reason, or just in general the way
No,
he
he
handles things?
changed the way India played cricket because that transition happened where Dhoni was a facilitator, as in he wanted the team to win. India started chasing better in limited overs cricket. Overseas test matches, he didn't have a great attack, so he would go on the defensive a lot earlier. But just the right kind of guy at that time, and the T20 World Cup, and all that he did and led from the front.
Sachin or Virat, the better batsman? I think you may have answered this.
Yeah. I test cricket, definitely. I mean, Tendulkar didn't play enough T20s, but
Right.
test cricket, yeah. And at this stage, Virat has to be careful about that average. It's gone below 50. And in this day and age, if it's going below 50, when you just have two or three good teams, strong teams, then he's got to be worried about that. So Tendulkar is now coming through. And how many test hundreds for Tendulkar? I think 51 or something
51,
like that.
yeah.
And I think, and Virat is 34, around 34. Yeah, I think as a test batter, Tendulkar.
Okay. The biggest party animal from your team or another team that you encountered over the years on tour?
I wouldn't know because I was a bit like my father, early to bed at 10:30, and he was asked, actually, my father, whether he had, some nightlife and did he do all the mischief that most young players may. He said, yes, he finished everything by 10:30. So I was 10:30 to bed, but I would say Ajay Jadeja. Ajay Jadeja was such a star at the time, as he had this way with people. I remember, can you imagine, in this day and age, things like this would happen. We were going to New Zealand. We were in that lounge just before you go to the gate, and the flight was delayed forever. And this guy was restless. He's somebody who couldn't sit in one place. He said, we were in Delhi. He said, we should go to Ghunguru, which is a nightclub there. I said, no, but we already checked in. I'll manage that. We actually went out, spent a couple of nights there, a couple of hours there in that nightclub, and came back going through security and everything, immigration.
Different times.
Yeah, different times.
All right. Player that was the most fun to have in the locker room and on tour?
Same answer, but everyone in their own way. Venkatpati Raju was interesting. Tendulkar and me, we had some great times together, but Tendulkar was very comfortable with people that he was comfortable with, that he could trust. So for a little while, there were all these guys who came and just brightened up the dressing room. Subroto Banerjee, for example, may have played 2-3 test matches, but he was so sought after for company that poor fellow could not say no to anyone. So there was a Kapil Dev who would say that I'm going out this evening with Subbu. And then we said, but he told us he's coming out with us. And then with somebody else. So everybody wanted him and he couldn't say no to anyone. So I'll go with Ajay first, Tendulkar when we were together in a room. And Venkatpati Raju was very, very nice guy, almost timid during the daytime. But post 7:30 p.m., nobody dare go close to him. Even the great Kapil, they would come and realize, oh, it's 7:38 and Venki is appearing different. Let me patli gali se
Let me
nikal
step away. For us who watch Raju play over the years, that's not what you'd imagine. Really, it's a different, the timid, the impression that you said.
He spent more time in the opposition dressing room. They loved him. The South Africans had named him Muscles, and they just wanted a piece of Venkatpati Raju.
Series prediction, not finally, but series prediction for Border-Gavaskar Trophy.
It's a tough one. It might just be a little more competitive than the last two tours, where I think Indian cricket reached a new high when they beat Australia. Indian batting will be, will decide the fate of the series, because both Virat, Rohit are both not in their prime, to be fair. They are not in their prime at the peak of their powers. And the others, Yashasvi Jaiswal, Shubman Gill, and all these other players will have to rise to the occasion. Pant is the only one that I feel is at his prime and a very, very important player. Bowling wise, India is sorted if Shami gets fit. And the Australians, the aura and the ability that they had in the past, where every game they were like champions, is not there anymore. So who knows, how Australia turn up. because in the World Cup finals, the 50 overs World Cup final in Ahmedabad, it was the Australia of the old. You suddenly,
Yeah.
woke up and played like champions. So you have no idea how they'll play in this series. But I believe it will be a little more competitive.
Okay, since you're a movie buff more than anything else, favorite movie, Bollywood and Hollywood.
Lives of Others would be my one of the best movies of all time. Surely you've got to pick as, set a new benchmark. Dil Chahta Hai, Three Idiots. I don't watch too much of Hindi cinema now.
All right. And favorite actor and actress.
Too many of them to mention, but I think Tom Hanks, and I think in female maybe Sandra Bullock. Indian cinema, Om Puri for me was a great actor.
Wow.
Amitabh Bachchan in his time, and today there are I like Shah Rukh Khan, and the obvious one is because Amir Khan.
One last question, Sanjay. If you were to give advice to any young cricketer today who is 14, 15 years old trying to make it into the game, what would you give them?
Just what Tendulkar did when he was 11, 12, 13, play a lot of cricket because there are a lot of coaches out there who might, with not enough knowledge, but they mean well, but just might send in the wrong direction. So play a lot of matches, play a lot in the nets, play softball cricket as well. A lot of the greats came through that, and then learn your own thing. Like Mahendra Singh Dhoni, he learned cricket his own way. The stumping that you see wasn't taught to him. He just figured out that this is the best way to do it. And you figure out things if you keep doing it. Be relentless at the time. Just if you've chosen to be a cricketer, every waking moment, do that. Don't get too caught up in the biomechanics of things, and everything will sort itself out. And yeah, in today's day and age, fitness. Be strong.
Fitness.
Be fast. That will always be a great help. Virat Kohli, every time he's played a great innings, and I've had the opportunity to talk to him immediately, the first thing he mentions is the amount of time that he spent on his body, gym work and everything. He's not talking so much about math specific. He just feels that his body helped him achieve that excellence.
Yeah, great. Sanjay, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. And
Thank
we
you.
look forward to continuing to hear, like I
Thank,
said, your unfiltered comments on the game. Thanks.
thank you. Thank you.